Hello and welcome back. Today I'm going to be talking about this Bachmann N Scale F7 diesel. Now Bachmann's reputation is kind of all over the place, and it's hard to say if they are a good company in general. They make a lot of really nice models, but they also make a lot of stuff that's pretty crappy. And this particular engine actually came out of a ready-to-run train set. So honestly, I didn't really have high hopes for it when I first got it. But it proved me wrong. It really is nice, and I was kind of surprised. So first I want to talk about the mechanism. This engine features all-wheel pickup, all-wheel drive, dual brass flywheels, and a can motor. I'm not sure if the can motor is 3-pole or 5-pole, but it runs really well. So if it is 3-pole, then the trucks are geared in such a way so that by the time the engine starts moving, the motor has already smoothed out. It also has an LED headlight, which also illuminates the number boards, and it came with 2 knuckle couplers installed, although I swapped one of the knuckle couplers on the rear for a regular Rapido coupler because that's what all of my freight cars have. Alright, so here's a look at it without the shell on. There's not a whole lot to see, but you can see a really nice chunky chassis block, which gives this model a lot of weight and helps with the pulling power. You can see this, it's got the circuit board on top. It doesn't do much except for maybe some like momentum limiting for the motor, and it also lights up the headlight, of course. The lighting on this is not directional, it just stays on all the time that the engine has power. But that's okay. And also, if you look at the shell, sort of behind the chassis, about there is where it sits. So you can see there's a pretty good amount of space in the top of this engine. So if you wanted to put DCC or sound in it, I don't think it would be too much of a problem as far as space is concerned. This engine does use a split chassis design, which is sort of famously not the best, but it does actually have the motor wired to the circuit board. But the circuit board gets its power in turn from the two sides of the split chassis. So I wouldn't really knock off like quality points for split chassis design. Some people really hate them. I don't mind them so much. I mean, it's really just a matter of keeping it clean, and that's kind of the way all models are, so I'm not really so concerned about that. But just so you know, split chassis. Also, I didn't want to do this with taking the shell off, but I will put the shell back on camera, just to show how easy it is to get in this thing and service it. So I did have to pick it up to get the clips on the fuel tank back on, but the idea is that you don't have to take the trucks out and you don't have to take the couplers off, which can be very fiddly, to get the shell off if you want to service it or fit DCC. So another thing that really impressed me on this engine was the way the lining and the lettering looks. You can get as close as you want to the paintwork on this engine, and it just looks nice. I mean, it looks crisp and clean all the way around. You'll also notice, like that side cab window, some of the detail on the actual body has been picked out in different colors. So lastly, let's talk about the price of this engine. Now this came from a ready-to-run train set that only cost $110. The engines on their own from Bachmann cost only a little less than that, about 90 or 100 bucks. So I would definitely recommend getting the ready-to-run set because you get the 2 extra freight cars and a caboose and a spare controller and track if you ever need that. So I would say the value for money is really, really good on this engine. So it looks good in person and it looks good on paper, but that's all pretty much irrelevant unless it actually works really well. So let's see it run. Okay, for this next one I'm going to take my microphone off and just put it by the track so that you can listen to how much noise the engine makes. I think that the noise levels are quite acceptable from this model. The only sort of glaring defect that I can notice on this engine, the portholes are just open and the chassis block is right behind them. So if you look in that hole on all four of the portholes, you're just going to see the cast metal chassis block behind it. They maybe could have done something about that. They could have put a lens in it to just make it less obvious, and at least it would have been flush with the body, the plastic body. They could have painted the chassis block black so that just to make that a little bit less noticeable. It seems like there's some things they could have done and they just sort of left a big hole in the side of the engine. But other than that, I was really impressed with this engine. I don't really like to do ratings like 6 stars out of 10 or whatever, but I just kind of would rather give you my opinion of it and let that be that. So long story short, this is an engine that I run on my layout. I like it. I'm glad I bought it. I think it was worth the money. And yeah, I'm happy with it. So I'm just going to show a few shots of the engine running, and that'll be it. All right, well, there it is. That's all I have to say about it, so I hope you enjoyed it.